iScope Media. We are currently knowing the drastic situation that is escalating in the Ukraine-Russia crisis. Well, a major question arises here: is it the start of World War III? Russian President Vladimir Putin launched a military operation in Ukraine on Thursday, with explosions heard across the country and its foreign minister warning a full-scale invasion was underway. But why did Russia invade Ukraine? Let's look on that first. Russia has attacked Ukraine in what could be the start of war in Europe over Russia's demands for an end to NATO eastward expansion. While there had been tensions between Russia and Ukraine, a former Soviet republic, for a long time, the situation began getting out of control in early 2021. Well, in January last year, Ukrainian President Zelensky urged US President Joe Biden to let Ukraine join NATO. This angered Russia, which started sending troops near its Ukraine border for training exercises in spring last year and increased its during autumn. By December, the US began hyping up the deployment of the Russian troops, and President Joe Biden warned of severe sanctions if Russia invaded Ukraine. Well, Russia has demanded that the West gives a legally binding guarantee that NATO will not hold any military activity in Eastern Europe and Ukraine. Meanwhile, Vladimir Putin claims Ukraine is a puppet of the West and was never a proper state anyway. This is not the first time tensions between Russia and Ukraine has reached a boiling point. Russia had invaded Ukraine in 2014 when rebels backed by President Putin had seized large swaths of eastern Ukraine and had fought Ukraine's army since then. At that time, Russia had annexed Crimea. As a former Soviet republic, Ukraine has deep social culture and ties with Russia, and Russian is widely spoken there. But ever since Russia invaded in 2014, those relations have frayed. Russia attacked Ukraine when its pro-Russian president was deposed in the early 2014. The war in the East has since claimed more than 14,000 lives. Russia and Ukraine had signed the Minsk Peace Accord to hold the armed conflict in East Ukraine, including the Donbas region. But as the conflict has continued, Russia says it is sending peacekeepers to the regions where the conflict is brewing. The West calls it a smoke screen by Moscow to occupy the sovereign territory. The new tension between Russia and Ukraine, which also borders the European Union, has ramifications for the EU. And that's why the EU, most of who are NATO signatories, have joined the US in announcing sanctions against Russian entities. Just weeks ago, French President Emmanuel Macron flew to Moscow to talk to President Putin to reduce the tensions. India has called for diplomatic way out of the current crisis between Russia and Ukraine currently. But let's see what's going on in Ukraine after the invasion has started. Russian forces are advancing on Kyiv, the capital city of Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has confirmed that Russian troops have captured an airfield near Kyiv hours after they entered the country through Crimea and Donbas region. Well, fighting also broke out between Ukrainian and the Russian forces near the nuclear site in Chernobyl. Reports are also pouring in the clashes in the Kharkiv in the east and Odessa in the west. In Kyiv, the mayor has announced a curfew after hours of shelling, apparently by Russia, which led to loss of lives and destruction of property. Russian defense minister in a statement said it had managed to destroy as many as 74 Ukrainian military installations, including 11 airfields on Thursday. The Ukrainian police, on the other hand, said Russia had carried out as many as 203 attacks since the beginning of the day. Well, Ukraine's President Zelensky, while announcing that Kiev had decided to sever all diplomatic ties with Moscow, urged Russian citizens to stage protest against the invasion. He further demanded that a no-fly zone be introduced over Ukraine and that world leaders disconnect Russia from the SWIFT payment network. Russia treacherously attacked our state in the morning as Nazi Germany did in 2 world war years. As of today, our countries are on different sides of world history. Russia has embarked on a path of evil, but Ukraine is defending itself and won't give up its freedom no matter what Moscow decides, said Zelensky. In response to Russian President Vladimir Putin, he said on Thursday evening that Moscow was left with no other option than to invade Ukraine in order to defend Russia. Well, meanwhile, Joe Biden has also said that Putin is an aggressor. Addressing a press conference on Thursday evening, US President Joe Biden termed the Russian invasion of Ukraine as a premeditated attack. He also accused Moscow of indulging in political theater by accusing Kiev of genocide and use of chemical weapons without any evidence. Putin declared war. Putin is aggressor. He chose this war and now he and his country will bear the consequences, said US President Joe Biden. Joe Biden also announced the imposition of severe sanctions designed to maximize damage against the Russian economy. He added that the US and its allies are working to limit Russia's ability to conduct business in dollars, euros, pounds, and yen. The US president also said that the Western sanctions will target 4 more Russian banks and elites. Export controls will cut off more than half of Russia's high-tech imports, he added. Biden, meanwhile, also said cutting Russia from the SWIFT banking system is always an option. Asked if he had any plans to talk with Russian President Vladimir Putin, Joe Biden replied in negative. He also said that Russian military actions in Ukraine would make President Putin a pariah of the international stage. During the press conference on Thursday, US President Joe Biden announced that NATO has decided to deploy 7,000 additional forces to Germany. Responding to a question about whether NATO will consider sending troops to Ukraine, Joe Biden ruled out the possibility for now. He, however, added that US troops will defend every inch of the NATO territory. Asked whether he still considered Russian President Vladimir Putin a worthy adversary, US President Joe Biden said Putin wants to establish the former Soviet Union. Days after Russia's Security Council recognized the independence of Donetsk and Luhansk in the eastern Ukraine, President Vladimir Putin on Thursday ordered a military invasion of Ukraine. Well, in a televised address, Putin said he had ordered a special military operation in Ukraine to protect Russians in the separatist regions. The claim was in line with fears voiced by the US and its European allies that Russia could invade Ukraine on the false pretext of Ukrainian aggression. Russia's decision to send troops into Ukraine triggered sharp responses from world leaders, with many of them calling for tougher sanctions against Putin and his closest aides. US President Joe Biden condemned Russia for its unprovoked and unjustified attack on Ukraine. Biden also, while promising that the US and its allies will hold Russia accountable, said the G7 have agreed on devastating packages of sanctions against Russia. French President Emmanuel Macron said the Russian invasion of Ukraine is a turning point for Europe. His British counterpart Boris Johnson called President Vladimir Putin a dictator. while German Chancellor Olaf Scholz accused Russia of trying to wipe Ukraine off the map. China, however, backed Russian military actions in Ukraine, saying that it understands Moscow's reasonable concerns on security issues over Ukraine. Meanwhile, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has also spoken to Russian President. Prime Minister Narendra Modi held a telephonic call with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin to discuss the situation in Ukraine. A statement from the Prime Minister's office said that Prime Minister Narendra Modi reiterated his long-standing conviction that the differences between Russia and NATO can only be resolved through honest and sincere dialogue. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also appealed for an immediate cessation of violence and called for concentrated efforts for all sides to return to the path of diplomatic negotiations and dialogue. PM Modi also chaired a meeting of the Cabinet Committee on Security earlier in the day. Meanwhile, Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla said at a media briefing that 4,000 out of the 20,000 Indian nationals living in Ukraine have been evacuated. He added that Indian students and citizens stranded in Ukraine will be evacuated along the land borders of the neighboring countries. Well, this was all about the Ukraine-Russia crisis and what is going on and all that you actually need to know about. Stay with us, we shall bring you more topics to talk about. This is Aparna Singh reporting for iScope Media.